Great. So Cookie, do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into the theater?
Mm-hmm. I went to college at Kansas State Kansas State Teachers College, which no longer exists. It's called Kansas State College or something like that. And I got into theater. I used to work in the student union. I was married at 16, and my husband, he was a bit older than me, and he got a scholarship to play basketball in Kansas. We're both from New York. So I went there, and I was young, and he was going to college, and my job was working in the student union, and I used to clean the student union. And then I was asked by some theater students, they were doing Member of the Wedding, I think it was. And of course they needed the maid. So they asked me to play the part. I played the part. I had never acted before, and it just opened me up to theater. And then I graduated Kansas Teachers College. And then me and my roommate, we moved to Santa Fe. He was a hair makeup person. And I had graduated with BFA in directing. And anyway, so we became roommates. We moved to Santa Fe. He got a job at Santa Fe Opera. He decided that Santa Fe wasn't for him, and he wanted to move back to, I think he lived in Illinois. He wanted to move back to Illinois. So he moved back to Illinois, even though he had a job at the opera doing makeup. And he said, Cookie, you can do it. I said, yes, I can. He says, I'm going to tell them that I'm leaving in the middle of the season, which you don't. He says, but I'm going to tell them that you can do it, and you come up there and you can do my job. So I went up there to do his job, and the head of the hair and makeup department, after I did a makeup, looked at me and said, maybe next year you should come back as an apprentice. So that's how it started. The next year, they let me put wigs on and help them out, but the next year I came back and I was an apprentice, and that's how I got into the world of wig making, hair design, was an apprentice at the Santa Fe Opera. And then I lived in Santa Fe, but I traveled all over the country doing mostly opera. And so I've worked at probably every opera company in this country. And then about 21 years ago, I moved back to New York. I'm in Santa Fe now, but I moved back because my work was taking me to New York a lot. And I went, well, get a little apartment, go there and work, come back to Santa Fe. So that's what I did. And then I was working in New York and working off Broadway and doing opera as usual, traveling all over doing opera. And do you want me to go right on into how we met, Montana, or do you want to tell
no,
how
sure. That's, yeah.
So I'm working in New York, and then had been working at off-Broadway theaters, like the theater that I met Montana at was a theater that I'd worked at, and Montana was doing a show for them, Signature Theater, and Montana was doing a show for them, and they asked him who was his wig person, and he didn't really have one at that time, because you had just gotten out of school not long ago.
Yeah, I had just gotten out of school.
Yeah, and they introduced us. We met in the lobby. You know, they sent me an email, oh, Cookie, we'd like for you to meet Montana Blanco. I think you guys would get along well. And so I met Montana, and all of these things that fell into place. Montana now lives in the neighborhood that I grew up in, because I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. He lives in Brooklyn in my old neighborhood. And I live in New Mexico. I have a house in Santa Fe. In Montana, was born and raised in New Mexico, and I love New Mexico. He loves New Mexico. I love New York. He loves New York. And it was just sort of just all just sort of fell into place that we have a good way of, we communicate well. And one of the reasons we communicate well is we don't avoid the hard conversations. And we do basically feel the same way about design and collaboration, that everyone on a show, everyone, when I say everyone, the janitor could give me a note about a wig and I wouldn't say, why are you saying that? You know nothing. Because I do a lot of contemporary stuff. And it's like, that's, you can be, people can make you become more authentic in what you're doing. If you don't say that person is below me and they can't give me a note or an opinion. So, and that's one of our big connections, is that, you know, we research the same way, and that is the subways of New York and the buses and the community. And especially if you're doing, you know, a modern piece. And so Montana and I, we met, and I'm friends with his mother now. And I mean, we're friends. We're really friends. So go ahead, Montana.
So no, I love, that's a really like that's really beautiful that you went through all of that, because I'm also thinking about um the apprentice model, right? And you're talking about the opera, and it's a like, that's one thing that I really love about this craft, is it is very old world in that way, and that in a lot of ways you learn about doing it through those apprentice models. So it just reminded me. But um so I originally, actually, I did not grow up doing theater. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I played the oboe. And so when I was for undergrad, I went to Oberlin College and Conservatory, and there's a double degree program. And so I did um, oboe performance and history. Um, and you know, at a certain point in my time there, I realized, like, you know, I finished the degree, but I realized I didn't necessarily want to be a professional oboe player. I didn't know what I wanted to be exactly. I couldn't put it into words at that moment, but I knew that music, which I had done for at that time like half of my life, um, was not my path forward. I was also really interested in history, but specifically art history. And so when I was thinking about moving forward and kind of like furthering my education, I looked at art history programs, uh, curatorial, art history museum programs, and I found uh, a program, a master's program at Brown University, which worked between Brown and RISD. It's called the Public Humanities, and it's a program that's primarily based in um, thinking about museum work, both the content and then also how museums and institutions can speak outside of the museum. That's the public humanities. Um, but it really allowed me to hone and tailor my own approach to how I wanted to work within those institutions. So in the last semester of my time at Brown, I had become really interested in exhibition design and how museums specifically use space, basically narrative space, to tell stories. And I just had this thought. I was like, oh, maybe I should take intro to set design. Um, And I did in my last semester, and it totally changed my perspective. And what I realized is that what a theater designer does and what a curator does at the beginning parts of these processes are very similar, right? A curator is trying to tell a story and pick specific images or experiences that then let us know, help to illustrate and articulate that story. Um, and what a theater designer does is we immerse ourselves in the text, and then we pick these evocative images and research um, that we then bring to life. So there was a lot of crossover. I so I graduated from Brown, and I was looking for. I mean, I was really excited about theater, but I needed to I needed to work. And so I found actually there was a fellowship at the McNay Art Museum in San Antonio, um, which was working with the Tobin Theater Arts Collection, which is one of the largest theater arts archives in the world. So theater arts in terms of scenic design and costume sketches. Um, and so in a way it was this meeting of things that I was very interested in at that time, which was art history um, and the theater work. So I did this fellowship in Texas, in San Antonio, for a year, and I taught myself how to draw. I was looking at the masters, Ming Cho Lee and Jane Greenwood, um, and realized that everybody has their own style of communicating and drawing. And so I just kind of immerse myself in looking and then trying to draw. And so over that year, I developed my portfolio, and I applied to Yale, and I went to Yale for the design program. And when I graduated from Yale is when I met Cookie, about a year after. So we both kind of had very circumnavigated, like, interesting paths to get where we are. But I thought it was I thought it was important to go through that because I think that there's many paths that people end up in when they end up in the theater, or that many paths they've been through when they end up in the theater. So I will, now I'm going to, let me share this screen, and we can talk about the work we have done together. So this is a show called The Death of the Last Black Man. Cookie, you wanna
Okay, so this is the show. Um, and the death of the last Black man in the whole entire world is the first show that Montana and I did together. And one of the things about collaborating with someone that you've never met, you meet them to do a collaboration of the show. He's designing the costumes. And basically, I think a lot of people have to understand that costume designers, to an extent, design the hair. And what they do is some designers will give you a photograph and say, put that hairstyle on that person. Montana and I do not work that way. We, then can you do you have a slide, Montana, of your research and your collage?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So here
So
yeah.
this is what Montana gave me. And it's a series of collages. Can you just scroll through them so people can get a feel of, and this is meeting him the first time, and this is what he gives me. And I was so fascinated by it because normally you would get a sketch, and it's like the costume designer sketched like this, the one we're looking at now. You'd get that sketch, And then you look at the hair and the silhouette there, and then you try to, I like working from sketches. But I really love working from collages because when you do a collage, this says a lot more to me than the sketch. And what it said to me was that this designer has a feeling that he's working with, not like, oh, get on Zoom, get on Google, download. I can't tell you how many times I've been given period pieces to do. And if it's a Black woman, it's Rihanna in a wig in that style. And that's the research they give me. And the question is, but it's Rihanna and she's wearing a wig. So this gives me a better understanding of who I'm working with and how he sees things. So it was really, really exciting when Montana gave me these collages. And then he sketched the costumes. But this is what he first gave me, was the collage. And we talked about why that collage and what that meant to him. Go ahead, Montana. About
Yeah,
you
so
and using the collages, I think it's a very um, modern, fresh way of designing shows.
yeah, I think it's helpful, as you see, it was the collage starts for me kind of as like an evocation, like the evocative things, that the images and the feeling, like you said, that we want. And then that allows me to focus and then distill what we want in the design. So this is a character, Queen then Pharaoh Hatshepsut. I should explain first that Death of the Last Black Man is essentially, I think you could call it kind of, it's in a choreo poem world. It's more of a performance piece than anything. It's written by Susan Laurie Parks and was directed by Liliana Blaine Cruz at Signature. And this was the off-Broadway revival. So it hadn't been done in 20 years. And so, and it just seems so timely about like what we're talking about in our world right now. Essentially, primarily the characters are all icons of Black history, Black art history. So it's all working with iconography, stereotypes, but we really wanted to kind of like, I mean, and the whole purpose is it's a evocation that there's the Black man who dies, he's being brought home through his ancestors. So I just wanted to kind of introduce that. But this is Queen then Pharaoh Hatshepsut. This is the collage that I gave Cookie. And then ultimately we ended up, I was looking at research. So this is Queen Latifah in the early 90s. And I really loved, I was kind of, I liked this idea of like kind of like the Egyptian braids, but then I saw this and I was like, wow, that's really strong. And then for the silhouette, I've always loved this image of Dolly. And so I put that in because then a lot of times, even if we're designing for a show like this, there's all different types of influences. So then we land on that. And so this is Amelia. Cookie.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is Amelia. And working, okay, so we had the collage, we had the braids, and then he showed me the Queen Latifah photograph, and I was like, oh, okay. So what I took from it with the collage when he gave it to me was these braids. There are so many types of braids, And we can use braids as during that time, and still women, you know, they wear the really long braids or they put them on top of their hair. It's like a crown. So I made this headpiece based on the sketch and based on the feeling of the collage that he gave me for this character. And it's strong, powerful, beautiful. And so I said to Montana, I said, Montana, I think I want to make a crown for her that has all the different types of braids in there. The only thing it doesn't have dreadlocks, but it has two strand twisted braids. It has about 5, 6 different types of braids. And we made a buckram form and put the braids around it so that it would sit like a crown on her head. Now she has that crown piece, which is a separate piece, and she's also wearing a wig underneath it. So what you're seeing around the front is not her hair, it's a wig. And the reason we did that is in that wig, there are magnets and stuff sewn to this piece so that we can just click it on her head. And I made it as tall as possible because I thought that was the strength in it, is that how tall can it be? And the only limitation was making sure she could get through the doorways and exit the building if there was a fire. So it's a lot taller than it looks in the photograph.
So this, so that was a, you know, and that it's like, it was so interesting because Cookie was like, well, why don't, you know, you like this, you're interested in these braids, but then you're interested in this up thing. So it's like, why don't we just throw all the braids at it, right? And so like, there's like, kind of like in the dance that we're having as we're trying to create these characters, but also importantly, also with Amelia. So Amelia, later on in our slideshow, Amelia comes back. So she's an actress that we worked with on our very first show, but we continue to work with her on many shows. So the next show that we're going to talk about is The House That Will Not Stand, which happened at New York Theater Workshop. It's a play by Marcus Gardley and also directed by Liliana Blank Cruz. And it's about, it's based in 1836 New Orleans. And I should say it's a take on the House of Bernarda Alba. And in New Orleans at this time, it was a strange time right after the French had left and right before Louisiana became part of the Louisiana Purchase, where there were free women of color and free people of color. And specifically, this play deals with the death of a white patriarch and his mistress, who's had these 3 daughters. And so the play deals with the relationship and the historical relationship with that. But so essentially, you know, for us, what was really interesting is we were going to have this moment, this show basically and there was, I think, 7 women of color, 7 Black women on the stage. And so what was really important is that we wanted each performer to be very carved out and very specific. We wanted, you know, what I've learned a lot about Cookie is it's on these minutia details. So I've learned so much about the hair quality and kind of like naturalism. So I'll take you through a little bit of our research, but I'll say that there's the research, and then with this particular show, we can look specifically at Cookie's work and how Cookie differentiates character through the hair. So these are images of free women of color from that time, and the head wrap on top is called the tignon. And very often they were adorned with rhinestones or feathers, or held things in them. Really loved this image. Um, you know, wrapped in interesting ways. Um, but it was kind of a sign of identification, but also a sign of like wealth and prosperity and beauty. Um, this is the image I think we really thought was evocative for our maid character, Makeba.
Mhm.
Um, so just, what's important to me in terms of the clothes is that there's, even if we were using some like more modern fabrics with maybe synthetics or like interesting shine or whatever, it's really important to stay true to, for me, to stay true to the silhouette, um, uh, as this was a very period piece. So it take you through a little bit of the research that I was looking at. Oh, and also we had fair amount of undergarments, right? So with these
Mhm.
tignons, we had scenes where the women on stage would have to take off the tignon, take off the clothes. And so there's a level of intimacy and specificity that needs to happen with um, costume and hair specifically, and how that functions live performance. Okay, so Cookie.
Okay, so in this, to get into collaborating about hair, and when you do a show, and there's 7 Black women in this show, and when I teach classes, I always say the texture of the hair is related to the skin color. So um, usually the darker the hair, the more texture, the darker the person, the more texture there is in their hair. So one of the things I wanted to do this was to make sure that all 7 women had a different quality of texture in their hair. So the texture of the hair was never repeated twice. So Linda, who is a fairly light-skinned Black woman, also has features that are grounded in being Black. And then when you have, so her texture was, it wasn't curly, but it was it had a lot more texture to it. And then the other woman who played her friend, Marie Thomas, who played Lavere, not only did she have a more of a wavy texture, I also gave her a lighter colored hair to show that, because she was so prissy and so grounded into being white. And the story is basically about mulatto women. And so the lighter your skin, the better you were. And one of the things, to get back to collaboration, they wore these tignons, and they would tie their hair on stage. They would take it off on stage. So the theme of collaborating is our director, Liliana. It's like Liliana gave us as much time as we needed so that the women could tie these tignons, and they would look, they're looking in a mirror that they can't see anything. So they're sitting there looking in a mirror, but they can't see themselves. But it has to come out looking like they could see themselves. So
Yeah, and I think what you were saying, Cookie, too, is that you were that Liliana gives us the time, right, in the
right,
process,
right.
because and that again speaks to the collaboration part, is that Liliana understands that hair and the hair journey in The House That Will Not Stand is so vital to the storytelling, because it is dealing with all these mulatto women, that
Mm-hmm.
she gives us the time in rehearsal to do the work that we need to do, which is like all part of, so it's not just the collaboration, again, going back to what you said, Cookie, it's the collaboration with everybody on the journey.
And like I can't remember who did the lighting for this one, Montana.
This was Ezao.
Yeah, and it's like, working with lighting designers who go, okay, we've got 7 Black women on stage. Let's make sure none of them turn gray. You know what I mean? That their skin looks healthy and that it has color to it and it's not gray. And they are wearing makeup, but at the same time, we don't want to see the makeup. And with the different, okay, this scene here, the actress Janice gets her hair, which is down to her butt, because this is their beauty in the play. It's like everyone has this beautiful hair.
This is
And
Janice, that's her hair right
yeah,
there.
and this wig is really only chin length. It looks like it's long. It's not. It's rigged to look like it's long, and we pulled it back in a braid and braided it, and it gets cut on stage. This is how her mother punishes her, is to cut her hair off. And there's this scene that I think we worked on that scene, cutting this scene here. Our director, I think we worked on it like a day and a half. We started at the end of the day, as usual, like after dinner, and we worked on it, and we came back the next day and we worked on it and worked on it. Collaboration, the height of the chair for her to reach over, for Linda to reach over and cut it. You see how high it is there? They had to like lower it a little bit for Linda to do it because it was too tall. And then there's a lot of trickery going on in this scene, and it worked beautifully because of the collaborative nature of it all. The lighting where the shadows are falling there so that we don't see Linda's hand. We don't see Linda's hand. That shadow is there on purpose. It's not an accident because she's not cutting, she's pulling. And they made it so it was dark there so you wouldn't see the motion of her pulling the piece out of it. So it's, collaboration just doesn't mean me and Montana. It's everybody helping us out to like do the goal and make it real and believable. So, okay, I'm gonna let you, could you talk for a minute?
Yeah, and so this is Makeba. She's the maid, and she has, what's interesting about her journey is that in her tignon, she has jewels. At the end of the play, we realize that she's been hiding jewels in her tignon. So she actually had jewels spread throughout here, and this is her hair. And so what we did here with this is that we use, sometimes it's also a process of working. So this actress, Harriet, we were like, we really wanted to use her own hair. And then we added this fake braid, right? So a lot of times it's not just everybody wearing a wig. A lot of times it's kind of like we're thinking about how we can find ways to alter, shift their own natural hair too. And so again, those are all things that we can't really learn until we are in the room with the actor. And so that's something that I really value, is those conversations of that we have with the actors that allow us to find their character. So this is the final scene. So then the next show, the next show that we wanted to talk about is a show called Girls. This show, we did this show at the Yale Repertory Theater this fall, or in the fall of 2019 recently. It's a play written by Brandon Jacob Jenkins, who also wrote Octoroon, and it was directed by Liliana Blaine Cruz. And so the play Girls is a take on the Bacchae. It's this really wild take on the Bacchae. And primarily the job that we had, Cookie and I, was that each of these actors had, there's very few actors who had, each of these actors had about 4 to 5 costume changes. And even if the actors didn't have a change, we had to think about the shift in the journey that all of this happens. So by the end of the play, they've become something completely different in that transition. And so that's what this slideshow I've kind of included. Well, let's see. So this starts with Dionysus. And so this is Dionysus. He's coming to, he's a DJ in this story. And so he's like, he's creating this party in the field and all the women are coming. And Cookie, so we worked with Nick here. You know, essentially that's Nick's hair. And, you know, and we really thought, oh, what are like, Cookie, you want to talk?
The thing about Nick, I'd worked with Nick when he was in high school. He was in Choir Boy when it was at the New York Civic Center, I think it is. And he was a high school kid. And then the next time I run into him, he's doing this show. And he's got these little dreads that he wants to keep. And this is another thing of collaboration. I really don't know. When Montana and I talked, I said, well, Nick came in and he's got these little dreads, he wants to keep them. And it's like, okay. Which I think affects then, as a costume designer, tell me not if this is like, you know, it affects what he can wear, that he wants to keep his hair like this.
Yeah, but that's what, you know, I always love that, because it's like, you know, hair is so personal. So finding those things out, like, okay, you want to keep your hair, so then how can we craft and mold this character knowing that we're keeping your natural hair? And so we had to think about a lot of the you know, this is Aisha, that is her natural hair there.
Right, and she's premature gray, so then we want to keep that. How can you beat the look of this hair?
Beautiful.
You know what I mean? Beautiful, but she's a young woman who's premature gray. So Montana made sure, from what I remember, that the colors she wore complemented her hair, as opposed to going, oh, I want her, this is the dress I want her to wear, because she had lots of fittings and trying on stuff.
And then we have, these are 2 girls who had really long hair. So so again, we were like, we're gonna lean in to what the talent and the gifts that these women had with their hair. And so yeah, so we kept their long hair and just played with that.
Yeah, and they were so excited to use their own hair. And one of the things in collaborating with actors, and one of the pitfalls is to say, use your own hair and you do your own hair because it's cheaper. No, it's always more expensive to use somebody's own hair because they came in, they had a call, someone braided their hair. To get this ponytail to be that high, to stand up straight all the time, it's several ponytails with one and then wrapped. I mean, she sat there and had her hair done.
Mm-hmm.
And she was willing to come early because she was a younger undergrad student, weren't they? Undergrad,
Yeah.
Montana. So
Yeah.
they were, they were really glad to come, and they let us put product in their hair, but we had to get really good product for their hair. And the collaboration is working with the administration, going, because they're using their own hair, I want them to go to a salon, get their hair prepped to be used, conditioned, clean, so that they can use their hair is healthy and we can use it without destroying it.
And so this is a wig, so then there were some people, and this was a wig for this girl. And so this wig, this woman Zoe, we kind of wanted to give her some edge. And so she only played one girl in the story, but that was like, that's
She was
that
out. Do we have a picture of what she looks like in real life?
I
Because
don't, I don't actually, yeah.
Because she is a little Midwest girl. And it was like, what can we do to give her some sort of edge? And what was really fun was, and she was game for it. This is based on a look that we see in New Mexico. We call it a little cholo girl. And it was like doing that makeup on her and giving her hair that looked like it was fried and it's growing up.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. It's like, take the hair, fry it, And so the way you do this sort of look is just in reverse. The light part of the wig is the base color of the wig, and then the rest of it is dyed. And and she was down to do it, you know what I mean? She was down to like do her own makeup, wear that wig.
But yeah, I think what I was saying to you earlier is that it's like each one of these conversations, right, is figuring out, and she wanted that. She wanted, it's when we weren't imposing, oh, let's give her some edge. She's like, I kind of want some edge, right? So it's like, and then we kind of like move into, well, how can we give that to her? So then the next slides are essentially gonna be slides of this is one of our main character, Gaga, and she takes us through, and I wanted to use, this is how she starts. She's kind of like, basically, I was thinking like, what would kind of like a woman who hasn't been to a music festival since like the mid 90s, what would she wear now to a club basically in the woods? So then as the party progresses, right, she loses the jacket, but we've cut the jeans. She's cut her jeans, um, has the t-shirt, right? She's cut her t-shirt. Then towards the end, she becomes completely animalistic. So somehow she finds this fur coat she's found these accessories in the party. And by the end, right? And again, we were working with Janine's own hair, and that was fun. Just like kind of like, how do we start it, up and nice, and by the end, so that's Janine. Then Amelia again. This was, oh, go ahead.
Well, with Janine, I've worked with Janine before. She's very meticulous. She knows because I think I came in with a wig that I was gonna wig her. And she was very, very nice, but this is collaboration. She says, Cookie, I really have been thinking about it. She goes, I don't think You know, a lot of times actor feels like if you put a wig on, the wig becomes a barrier between them and the audience. And she says, I don't want anything there that's a barrier between how I'm telling this story. So it was like, okay, you want to use your own hair. So yeah, so we
That's
okay.
right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because she had a wig.
So then, Amelia, again, she was the actress from Death of the Last Black Man that we talked about. Um, she played several characters, so we knew that we were going to have to wig Amelia. So here's her first character. Um, here's her second character. And then her third is pretty extreme, where she comes back as a dead ghost. Right? And so, you know, and she also had to do this wild dance in this gown, right? So those are all things. How do we keep the prosthetics on? How do we keep the hair
And it
on?
was a quick change into that.
And then quick change into all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just I think it's, you know, this is like a lot of the work that we do is how can we like create individuality and specificity in each one of these, not just the actors, but each one of their characters. This is a this is another image of the wild dance. Um, this girl, Gina, she had to be a clown. So, you know, she goes from Valley Girl to clown. Um, that's her.
And you know, all of these actors have been working on the play, so they have specific idea in their mind. It looks like something, and in collaborating with actors, you really want to make sure that what they've been seeing in their mind, that you can help them achieve it by pleasing the costume designer, the director, and sometimes the owners of the theater.
Yeah.
So, and it's a lot, it's a collaboration, it's not just one or two people getting together.
So then the last journey that I want to talk about is Theo, who's actually, he's the one who is murdered by his mother, Gaga, at the end in the Bacchanalian ceremony. So we started here where and also I wanted to point out that the scenic design, you can see it a little bit better here, but in
Yeah.
the
Oh,
what's
yes.
actually, this is live streamed, and so what's happening in this cube in the lower section of the stage is actually what's being filmed or being screened through the projection. So this is Theo, and he starts, you know, very like, again, working with kind of like, um, working with things that are identifiable, right? So he, like, in terms of, he's a very like conservative, um, like, we kind of wanted to portray um, a conservative, right? So he has the red bandana, but he also has like this militaristic gear. And then he switches by the end of the story, he actually becomes a drag queen because he wants to go into drag to infiltrate the party to try and find his mom, and then he ends up being killed. So this is um oh, I forget his name, our actor, but Will. This is Will. So anyway, so then this wig had to go through many, you know, there's a dance sequence that's all being live streamed. And then at the end, his mom kills him. And so then this wig had to be bloody, right? And so there's, you know, there's like all these, not only did we want to achieve like a certain style and look, but then the story calls for it to be essentially destroyed. So Cookie, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, in working on this one, it was like by the end of the show, the wig is bloody. So we had to have, did we have 2 or 3?
I
But
think
it
maybe
was,
3, yeah.
yeah, because on 2 show days. So we wound up having to do 3 wigs so that it could be bloody and cleaned, but there's no way you could get it ready for the next show on a 2 show day. So we wound up with 3 wigs. And then Will has very specific ideas. He wanted to do his makeup. And he's never done drag, but his girlfriend taught him how to do his makeup, how to line his lips, he wound up doing really, really well. And that was some work, because I had to work with him on getting the look, because Montana has specific look, the intensity of what the makeup was. And it's
So this was Girls. And really, 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 that such a fun show to collaborate and work with you on, Cookie. But
that was fun.
So yeah, so I just wanted to take you through kind of like this visual journey, but I think now we can open it up for any questions, if anybody has any questions.
If anybody has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, start your video, interact if you would like.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Tyler Hinton. I'm a 3rd year costume design student here at Wayne, and also a cosmetologist. So I appreciate the way, one, you work together, and 2, the fact that you actually take the actors' character building work, the work that they done at the table and in rehearsal, into account when not necessarily coming up with ideas, but facilitating those ideas to make sure that what you are providing them isn't doing them a disservice and working against the work that they've done in rehearsal. So I just want to say I appreciate the way you guys work together and the example that you have placed before us, because I also kind of work in this pictorial way and try to make sure that the actors are comfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just appreciative of the work that you 2 have done, and it looks amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's really, I appreciate you saying that, because that is one of the things. You're totally right. So when the actor comes to the fitting, they've already been in the room at that point for like a long time and kind of like living, sleeping, being with those characters, right? And so like I'm always curious about what their thoughts are. Because at this point they really know those characters intimately, or they're trying to find them, but really valuable information that happens then.
Great, thank you guys so much.
No, thank you.
I want to jump in, because this is the dance. The dance is, and I'm going to be very honest, what's happening in theater now with Black actors and their hair. This is the dance. The dance is an actor saying, I want this texture hair on my head. And I always have to look at it and say, well, do you want to be a Black woman who looks like she's wearing a wig, or do you want it to look like it's growing out of your head? If you want it to look like it's growing out of your head, it has to be the texture that grows out of your head.
Right.
But Black women are wearing wigs. All women are wearing wigs now. So that's the question. And okay, so you've been thinking about a hairdo, and sometimes it's very inappropriate. It's not period. It's not telling the story. And that's what, this is how I work with actors with collaborating is, are we telling the story?
Mm.
Or you just want to be in a wig that looks like a wig? It's a great wig, but is it driving the story?
Mm.
And that's where, as designers, why we're hired. It must be true to driving that story and telling that story. If it's not, then we have a conversation about it. We talk about how we can tell the story. You know what I mean? How we can tell the story, how we can, always that question, is it your hair or are you a Black woman in a wig?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I worked on Sweat, and I had an actress who was natural and wanted to wear a wig. But I did wig her, but I wigged her in a way where it looked like it was her hair. Which she was appreciative of, because she was so concerned that the wig I was going to give her was going to be some silky straight plastic wig that was not realistic. So she was just like, okay, where did you get this wig? I just need one in my back pocket just in case I work on another show and I'm needing a wig that looks like my hair. So yeah, thank you.
and you know, in a lot of stories, like in Sweat, it would be very appropriate for a woman working in that factory who wears a wig when she's at that factory. You know what I mean? That's a thing, a cultural thing, that women sometimes will have the wig I wear to work.
The working wig.
Yeah. Like, we always have, like, when what show did we do? Fabulation.
Yeah, the Nottage.
Yeah, where the woman was an MTA worker, and it was like, yeah, let's give her that wig with the MTA worker wig. You know what I mean? Where you're not disguising that it's a wig. You know, you're not just. It's like, it's a wig. I wear my wig to work. You know. So yeah, that's one of the things is, if it tells the story, fine. If because sometimes people have made, this is a conversation Montana and he has, that I always go that women get caught up in being beautiful. And
well, not just women. I think all
a type of beauty, a limited beauty. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that it's just, there's beauty in everything. You know?
Yeah, we always find, even if it's not like a conventional beauty, I think what we're always searching for is or even if we're not working with a conventional idea of beauty, right? I think everything that we try to do is in service of trying to make it tell the story and also be beautiful. Well, but thank you for
thank you.
Yeah, listening and being here with us.
Absolutely.
Montana and Cookie, I want to follow up a little bit in this process. Can you talk about the timeline of the design process and where that's at when the actor enters the collaboration, and how that process works if the design has been completed, you know, it's sketched, and there are some maneuvers that must happen, I imagine. But I'd love to hear about the timeline and how you make that work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think about it, it's almost like it's a triangulation, right? So it initially, the conversation is starting with me and a director. And we're dreaming, imagining about what these characters could be, what they look like, who they look like, what their history is, what shoes they wear. Like anything really can be relevant. And then it's still in pre-production. Then Cookie and I will meet and we have our conversation on a more intimate level about like, what is the relationship between hair and storytelling, like we've been going through. So that point there's a triangulation of ideas, right? There's 3 people there. And then we add on the, we'll present, present a design or collages, whatever the world is or whatever is appropriate for the show. Like, whether it very often on modern shows, I'll do a collage, but then, there's sometimes I have to sketch because we're building. So anyways, we'll present our idea that, of what the world is. And very often it's like kind of like, I'm even in that moment of first rehearsal, I'm always open and hearing what people, how they're talking about it and engaging it, because it's a work in progress. And I'll also note that especially on first rehearsals, I always pay attention to everybody in the room, what they're wearing, because it's kind of like the first day of school, and everybody's going to wear something to first rehearsal that they feel comfortable and confident in. And so I'm always kind of like, even at that point, I'm kind of looking about like, how can I adapt the idea that the director, Cookie, and I have come to thus far. Now I'm observing the actor. How can I already incorporate what they're showing is what they feel confident and comfortable in? Of course, this is talking about modern clothes. And then we get to the fitting where all of those things have been considered. And then we have the time to hear their thoughts on character and what it can be. And I mean, very often, I think that, again, I keep on going back to the director because all 3 of these shows, we worked with Liliana Blaine Cruz. We work with many, many different directors, but, very, it's important that the director, I think I guess what I'm trying to say is that casting, which even say we're talking about a timeline. So the casting is even before that, right? And I find a lot of times Liliana's casting is so strong and accurate that by the time we get to the room with the actors, a lot of what we brought, it works, but certain things need adjustment. And we always remain open to those adjustments, even to up into the very end, because ultimately the goal is to give the performer the confidence and the honestly the opportunity not to think about clothing. They're not thinking about what they look like. They're just able to focus on their performance.
And another thing that happens to Father is Montana is one of the few designers that does not think about hair last. We get together and we talk, and then we come together.
Right after I talk to Liliana, then I talk to you.
Yeah, and we go, what is the hair support for this show? For me, it's, I need all these wigs I do custom work. And that's one of the things that makes the shows look great, is there's no pulling it out of the box and putting it on someone's head. It will at least have a custom front on it, if it's fronted. It will, and so it's about getting together for the producers a very realistic budget which is one of the first places for me to start, is talk to Montana. Well, Montana, are these? And then okay, let's put together a budget. And we work where, in one of my things is to change this business where the budget is given before you know the needs.
Yeah.
And that's always the pitfall with hair.
Well,
There
and
is a
costume.
show that
Both.
needs
Yeah.
10 wigs and you have a budget of $200. Or you have a budget of $2,000. 10 wigs they will not get you. To know what a realistic budget is if you want custom quality work.
Well, and I think there, Cookie, right? You're identifying. I think that is something that could really shift how I think, but it's an education, because I don't think I've even learned a lot about. I've learned so much about wigs, pricing, custom, like all that's, all the different conversations. I've learned so much through you, and I think that it's valuable to have those conversations so that people know that if you're going to do a period show,
yes,
assume that there should be a budget for hair design, but then also to the person who has to maintain the wigs and put the wigs on the actors during the run, because that's not us.
Right. And it's one of the things too that I really feel strongly about is it is hair. The person who maintains a $3,000 wig must know what they're doing. Okay, so that it's not just saying to me, can you train them in 2 or 3 hours? Show them how to set the hair. Show them how to do it. I didn't learn it in 2 or 3 hours. I don't know why people think someone else can learn it in 2 or 3 hours. Really, I'm still learning. I mean, far as finger waves and period hairdos and stuff, it's a big ask to have someone where you have to teach them how to block a wig down. And now I'm going to have to teach them how to roll a roller set. And it's not just put the rollers in this way. It's really, it's just, that's
just because that budgeting process for us happens right after we've had our creative conversation. And often, and it's still in the pre-production space, which allows us to then have the conversation with the directors, producers, about what the actual needs of the show are, if it wants to be done, period, right? If it needs to be modern, that's a different calculation, right? Because maybe, like we've gone through, maybe some people will have wigs, maybe they'll be partial wigs, maybe they will use their real hair, but that also has an expense, right? So that's I think that is one thing slowly that we're able to shift in our industry. At least I see a shift happening, and at least especially with the theaters that we work with consistently, because very often we'll say we create a budget based on what we think might happen, but very often we're always coming in below, because we just want to anticipate what the needs might be, because you want to be ahead and not behind in a thing that is very time based and kind of like time contingent.
And then there's also, that productions where we don't have, collaborating and support, like support for the hair, like a hair room, not the bathroom, but the hair room. a room to do your work, a room for the actors to come to get their wigs put on, a room to do the maintenance of the wigs. And so that's one of the things that's another thing that I don't assume anymore that there is, I don't ever assume that there's a place to do the wigs. That's a question. Where will the wigs be done? And I feel that, I guess you could go in the dressing room and put their wigs on, but it's their dressing room.
Yeah, and
And you have,
not all buildings, right, can accommodate, right? But it's like the important things to think about, like, or even very often it's like the suggestion will be that the wigs can be in the green room, but that's the actor's green room, right? So it's like it's always going back to kind of like we're trying to facilitate like positive energy and support, right? And so it's like kind of like we develop, for better or worse, like kind of like a battle plan ahead of time that then allows the process to be really smooth and not there's always going to be surprises and things that come up, but if you prepare in such a way, then it allows you the possibility to navigate that really easily.
And always with doing some shows where I'm always thinking ahead of, okay, so this is the wig. And what if they don't like it? Like, not like the style of it, but the actual color of it or the actual length of it. So I try to always have plan A, plan B, because.
And who's they?
Actors. What if the actor doesn't like it? What if the director doesn't like it? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What if I put, and that's happened with Fefu. Mm-hmm. Remember, I was making a wig for one of the actresses, and I said, well, just because she has to lay in a bed, here is going to be her little rehearsal wig, because we were running behind till her custom wig is finished. And so, but what happened was Liliana fell in love with the first wig, the quote rehearsal wig. We put the one I was making on her, but by that time, our whole feeling of that actress had changed, and we just put her back in the rehearsal wig. We had to put a front on and stuff, but we put her back because everybody was comfortable with it. She was comfortable with it. Liliana was comfortable with it. And it was like, okay, the actress liked it, so it was fine.
Yeah, and I think that story kind of like illustrates something that I think is valuable skill for designers to have, which is to be able to kind of like be malleable and just like, yes, even, and let go. Sometimes some ideas, I know, some things are a little bit harder to let go than not, but I have found that in that process of like letting go and reimagining, that it always becomes better than I even kind of like anticipated or thought that it could be. So yeah, I think it's important, not just for theater design, but pretty much every discipline in the theater. It's like really malleability. I mean, it's like we have to be able to kind of like
and I always feel a little, I go, actors or directors or someone will say, and they're very apologetic about, can we change it? I don't like it. And me and Montana's answer is always, sure. And they seem very surprised with that because they're ready to fight for it. It's like, you don't like it? Okay. Yeah, let's start over.
And yeah, or like, to be like, they'll be like, I don't like it. And then you're like, yeah, I'm not sure I like it either. Like you're it's kind of like in figuring out like what you don't like about something, then you find that the next thing is informed by the thing you didn't like or wasn't quite working, right? So that process of like letting go of those first ideas is so valuable. But I know it's hard. It's hard sometimes.
So anybody else have any questions?
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed your talk and your input about collaboration. I've been working on a script and researching Charles Darwin. He has a quote. It was laying right here in front of me. In the long history of humankind and animal kind too, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. And that's very true in our industry. You get asked back if you collaborate and if you're willing to work with people. If you want your own way, they're not going to ask you back. And that's the truth of it.
Yeah, and it's a dance, right, too, because it's like it's like you have to protect whatever initial ideas you have, or like in your case, protect the script, right? But it's like, you know, it's always figuring out how to protect that, but also work with others, you know? And I've realized that each show and each collaboration with each actor is different. You know, requires like different fine tuning.
The same actor in a different show.
No, absolutely. And yes, we have discovered that before. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The thing that I have found with at least here in the Detroit market and the professional world, that when I do a period piece, they usually go along with everything that I've shown them. But if it's a contemporary piece, a modern piece, they want to dress like themselves. And I just wonder if you found that to be true or if it's just with me.
I think what it is I think that with a modern piece, people know their bodies
right
in that silhouette. So in a modern piece, there's some things that people have, they go, I don't wear that. My butt's too big. I don't wear that. It makes me look flat chested. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe looking flat chested is helping to tell the story as a writer, you know what I mean? And we collaborate with a writer who uses us all the time for their stuff. And he is a writer who has very specific about his writing and what the story he wants to tell. And he's one of the few writers that gives you hair notes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, he's Brandon Jacob Jenkins. He's a genius. And he can't tell, and then he'll show you a picture of something that is so esoteric and so, I'm like, what planet are you on? What is this? Because he doesn't give you a picture of the hair. He'll give you a picture of the feeling of something that he was just thinking about when he wrote that. And then you have to take that in, because remember with girls?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The picture of what's the name, the bloody and it was like the picture that he gave us wasn't that at me. It wasn't that at all. I'm like, okay, I guess she's got to look odd.
Yeah, but to go back to what you said, I do find that is true. You know, and I think a lot of people would anticipate that a period show for a costume designer would be more difficult, but I very often my experience has been that the modern shows are more difficult, only because there's more voices that need to be, that like you said, are present.
Mhm.
And people have a vocabulary to talk about what we all have, a relationship to our own body and how we dress ourselves. And so that's what I was saying, that in that first rehearsal, I'm always looking like it's like the first day of school, so that I can kind of like anticipate some of those things that are going to come up in the fitting around, like, oh, I don't usually wear something like this. I would, when I'm looking at first rehearsal, I feel like a lot of times I'm being like, I'm having that, asking myself those questions. What are the garments that they probably don't want to wear? You know, how can I get those out of the way so that we, you know.
Mhm.
Anyway, I do the same with the hair. I come into that first reading or meet and greet, and I am looking around that room and I'm seeing, because people are putting their best foot forward on that first day. And I'm saying to myself, oh, okay, she's got really long hair and she probably likes it. When a woman's hair goes past the middle of her back, it's a choice.
Oh, yes.
And we have to go, and not very often, to say that, I mean, women have always had long hair. I don't care what period it is. Even when women wore bobs, there were women who still wore their long hair. So if I'm doing a 20s piece and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this woman, yeah, there's no way we're going to get that under a bob and make it look real. But during the 20s, there were women who didn't cut their hair.
Right.
So what does that hair do for her? You know what I mean? How do we get that shape and that silhouette that's tight to the head, but at the same time, they have long hair? And you look at the women, it's like, oh, okay, so she wears her hair natural. Wonder, I go and I say to them, do you have any preferences on if we were to put you in a pressed hair look? Do you have any? And sometimes they say, well, I don't know. I always look crazy when that. But, my job is to navigate those sort of things and make them feel comfortable and, but I just, yeah, it's like that, like Montana says, and this is why we work together, because we both, and then when that first reading is over and him and I are walking to the subway, it's like, did you see? What are you going to do about that? Did you see the shoes she had on? Ooh. There was a guy that had to wear, we did a show where there was a guy he was the writer and he decided to do the lead. And the lead was a drag queen in stilettos. And honestly, brilliant. It turned out to be one of the best things. We were like going, oh dear, we got a little baby drag queen. How are we going to teach him how to walk in heels? And I would just drop by rehearsal. And then it would be like, and I would say, you really need to be wearing heels anytime you walk in the rehearsal room. And he's like, really? Yeah. And just convinced him that come to rehearsal, wear your heels. Don't wait till you get on stage to put your heels on. So Montana had to get him some rehearsal heels. So, but yeah, it's just sort of like, and that's I think collaboration. People think it's like we sit down and we talk to each other, and that's how we collaborate. I don't think so. It doesn't.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an ongoing, it's an ever moving process until, I guess, the show is frozen. Pretty much up until the very end.
Oh, to the very end. I gotta get some electricity here. Okay.
Any more last minute questions from anybody?
Who's out there? Hi.
Well, thank you all for joining.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been fun listening to your journey and your process, and thank you for sharing your time and your energy with us. So thank you very much.